Why did she look so out of place in a war zone? That was the first question anyone asked when Chief Warrant Officer Anna Sharma stepped off the transport at Forward Operating Base Viper. The heat rolled across the tarmac like invisible fire, distorting everything it touched. The air itself seemed to hum, a low, metallic vibration of machinery, sweat, and dust. Every breath carried the taste of scorched sand and diesel exhaust. It was the kind of place where the air never felt clean, where the ground trembled faintly under the rhythm of distant artillery. And into that landscape of noise and exhaustion walked a woman who moved like silence. Her boots didn't crunch the gravel like everyone else's did. Her uniform, standard issue OCP, sleeves rolled to regulation height, was too neat for the place. The others wore dust-stained fatigues, sweat-ringed collars, and thousand-yard stares. She looked untouched by all of it, like she'd stepped out of a briefing room in D.C. by mistake. In one hand she carried a heavy black Pelican case, the kind used for equipment no one else was allowed to touch. In the other a small pack slung over her shoulder, simple, unmarked. No patches except her name, no visible unit, no smile. The Marines at the gate watched her pass with the cautious curiosity reserved for creatures they didn't understand. One nudged the other. "Who's she with?" "Hell if I know, she ain't infantry." "Looks like intel." "Intel don't walk." They let her pass anyway, because whatever was on the orders pinned to her sleeve carried weight. Inside the administrative hub, a repurposed shipping container lined with flickering screens and the steady hum of overworked air conditioning, a tired army captain lifted his head from a pile of reports. His name tag read Pierce. His face said he'd seen too many sandstorms and too little sleep. "Can I help you?" he asked. She set the Pelican case down gently, as though it contained something fragile or dangerous. "Chief Warrant Officer Sharma, reporting as ordered. I'm here for the C4I network overhaul." Pierce blinked, taking the papers she handed him. "You're a wait, CW4." His brows shot up. "They sent a chief for a network upgrade." She didn't answer right away. Her eyes scanned the room, the buzzing fluorescent lights, the outdated monitors, the tangle of wires taped together like veins under plastic skin. When she finally looked at him, her gaze was steady, patient, but unreadable. "The system here is antiquated," she said softly. "It requires a specialist." Pierce forced a dry laugh, half out of confusion, half out of defense. "Yeah, I guess it does. Well, welcome to Viper, Chief. Your container's over in Section C. I'll get you a runner to show you the way." "Unnecessary, Captain. I can read a map." She turned to leave, but paused at the door. "I'll need full admin access to the JOCC server stack and Level 1 diagnostic privileges by 1800. Pierce frowned. "That's above my clearance. You'll need to talk to Major Kensington. He's expecting my request." And just like that, she was gone, the door closing behind her with a soft metallic click. Pierce exhaled, staring at the case she'd left an oily print of her boot beside. There was something about her presence, not authority in the loud, officer's way, but a stillness that unsettled him. Like she was too calm for the place. Like she'd seen worse things than this. Outside, the heat wrapped around her like a blanket of punishment. The base was a grid of HESCO barriers and shipping containers stacked like Lego blocks, every inch coated in dust. Generators coughed black smoke, helicopters howled in the distance, and every soldier walked with the same hurried exhaustion, the walk of people who didn't expect peace to last. Sharma didn't look around much. She didn't have to. Her eyes flicked from structure to structure, nodding antenna arrays, signal repeaters, the angle of satellite dishes. It wasn't sightseeing. It was assessment. By late afternoon, she'd claimed her assigned container, Spartan, metal walls sweating condensation, one cot, one desk, one power outlet. She unpacked with the precision of a field surgeon. Laptop, tools, notebooks. No photographs. No personal effects. Only the essentials. When evening came, the desert cooled, but only slightly. She made her way to the DFAC, the dining facility, a vast tent smelling of bleach, instant coffee, and reheated protein. It was crowded, noisy, alive with the hierarchy of the deployed. You could tell who was who by how they laughed, how they sat, how they ate. Officers stayed together, clean and deliberate. Infantry joked loudly, their laughter too sharp, masking nerves. Drone techs hunched over their food like they wanted to be invisible. And then there were the SEALs. They sat in the middle, a pack of wolves among soldiers, loud, confident, untouchable. They wore their arrogance like armor, unshaven faces, tattooed forearms, gear that wasn't quite regulation but too expensive for anyone to question. The leader, blonde, sunburned, with that permanent half-grin that made you want to punch or follow him, was telling a story, hands animated, voice carrying over the din. His call sign was Riptide. Everyone knew him. Everyone stayed out of his way. Everyone except her. She took her tray, dry chicken, overcooked rice, something green pretending to be salad, and sat alone at an empty table in the corner. No one followed. No one joined her. The corner became an island, and she, its only inhabitant. She ate methodically, fork, bite, chew, sip, observe. Because that's what she did, she observed. The human network around her was no different from the digital one. She mapped patterns, connections, vulnerabilities. She saw the glances, the unspoken rules, who deferred to whom, who carried quiet authority, who hid insecurity behind volume. She noticed Riptide's table especially, the laughter too sharp, too performative. A pack that laughed loudest when they felt the smallest threat. They noticed her too. Riptide's eyes flicked toward her mid-story, his grin tilted shark-like. "Hey," he murmured to his teammate beside him, "who's the librarian?" The others chuckled. "Lost her way to the airbase, maybe. She looks like HR sent her to count bullets." The laughter spread. Riptide stood, tray in hand, casual swagger carrying him toward her table. Conversations nearby dimmed slightly, the subtle shift of attention in a room where boredom was currency. This was entertainment. He stopped in front of her, shadow falling across her plate. She didn't look up, not at first. "Evening," he said, friendly, falsely so. She took one last bite, set her fork down, and raised her eyes. Dark, steady, impenetrable. "Don't see you around here before," he continued. "You knew." "I arrived today." "Right, welcome to the suck," he grinned. "What's your story, admin? You look like you know your way around a spreadsheet." A few laughs from behind him. Something flickered in her eyes, not anger, not even irritation, just patience thinning like glass under pressure. "Something like that," she replied softly. He leaned against the table. "Good to know who's who around here, you know, in case we need some paperwork pushed, or a printer unjammed in a hurry." More chuckles. The nearby soldiers pretended not to listen but didn't move, their trays forgotten mid-bite. Riptide tilted his head, examining her like she was an oddity. "So, what are you, a specialist? PFC, Air Force maybe," he smirked. "Senior airman fresh off the bird." She didn't answer, didn't blink. The silence stretched long enough to make even his teammates uneasy. Finally, she placed her fork beside her plate, aligning it perfectly with the tray's edge. Her eyes flicked to his chest, the gleam of the SEAL trident catching the overhead light, then back to his face. "You're a petty officer first class," she said. It wasn't a question. He smiled wider. "That's right. Been around the block a few times, so come on, don't be shy. The boys are wondering," he raised his voice so everyone could hear. "What's your rank?" A hush spread across the room like a slow-moving wave. Forks paused midair. Trays clattered softly to tables. Even the hum of conversation dimmed. Her eyes held his, calm as a lake before a storm. Then clear and level she said, "Chief Warrant Officer 4. The words landed like a detonation. For a full heartbeat, no one moved. Riptide's grin froze, the color draining from his face as his brain caught up to what she just said. Around them, heads turned, eyes widened. Even the soldiers in the back rows, who didn't know the difference between a warrant and a general, felt the shift. She wasn't a clerk, she wasn't a tech, she was senior, highly ranked, in many ways above him. And he had just mocked her publicly, arrogantly and completely out of line. The silence turned heavy, almost suffocating. He opened his mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to joke it away, but before he could, the base alarm shattered the air. The shriek of the warning siren cut through everything, drowning words, laughter, thought. Red lights flashed across the ceiling. A recorded voice bellowed. Incoming, incoming, incoming. All personnel seek immediate cover. The floor trembled as the first mortar hit. The windows rattled, the world tilted. The second explosion hit closer, glass shattering, screams breaking through the mechanical voice overhead. Soldiers ducked, instinct taking over, tables overturned, food scattered. Training met panic in a chaotic dance. But through it all she stood. Anna Sharma didn't flinch, didn't duck, didn't move until the moment demanded it. Then, with measured precision, she rose, pushed her chair back, and began walking toward the exit. Not running, walking. Eyes up, scanning, counting, listening to the rhythm of detonations like a musician hearing beats in chaos. As she passed Riptide, he was dragging a frightened private under a table, shouting for cover. Their eyes met, his wide with adrenaline, hers calm, calculating. No mockery there now. No pride. Only a single glance that said, "Watch, learn." And then she was gone, swallowed by the red haze outside, moving toward the source of the chaos, toward the sound of war. How did she move so calmly when the world was falling apart? Outside, the air was alive with sound, not sound the way peace knew it, but the metallic scream of chaos. The shriek of incoming rounds tore across the sky, followed by the deep, throat-punch thump of explosions landing too close to breathe. The smell of dust, burning diesel and cordite fused into a taste that coated every tongue. Anna Sharma moved through it like a ghost. The base was pandemonium, soldiers sprinting through smoke, radios squawking broken fragments, sirens bleeding into human shouts. The red emergency strobes painted everyone in flashes of blood-colored light. People dove into bunkers, crawled behind walls, vanished into doorways. She didn't. Her boots struck the gravel in steady, even rhythm, her breath controlled, her steps deliberate. The pelican case thumped lightly against her leg, her only companion in the storm. The wind pulled strands of her hair loose from her bun, snapping them across her cheek. She didn't brush them away. Her eyes stayed fixed on a single destination, the JOCC, the Joint Operations Command Center. That was the heart of Fob Viper, buried under reinforced concrete, packed with servers, radios, and men trying to make sense of chaos. And right now, it was dying. By the time she reached the bunker, the heavy steel door was already shaking from nearby impacts. A sergeant inside was shouting for personnel to clear the corridor when Sharma slipped through, her case in hand. The air was thick, hot, humming with static and fear. Inside, the JOCC was madness. Every screen glitched, the holographic map flickered like a candle in the wind, and the communication lines were a cacophony of white noise. Voices shouted across the room, Air Force controllers, Army intel, Marine fire support, all overlapping, all helpless. "I've lost Predator 1, someone yelled. "Comms are dead, sir, they're spoofing us," another cried. "The radar's painting ghosts. I can't separate real targets from static." Colonel Evans stood in the center, tall, broad, face like granite carved from fatigue. He was a man used to command, used to control, but now control had abandoned him. "Where is the mortar fire coming from?" he barked. No answer, only the hollow sound of a world without data. A young analyst with shaking hands slammed her keyboard. "The counter-battery radar's blind, sir. We're getting hundreds of false echoes. The system's overloaded." A fresh explosion interrupted her, closer this time. Dust fell from the ceiling vents. The bunker itself seemed to inhale and hold its breath. Evan's jaw clenched. "Somebody get me eyes, anything." That was when she arrived. No announcement, no salute, just the soft click of the door closing behind her. For a moment, no one noticed. In that chaos, a quiet figure didn't draw attention. But then, as she crossed the floor and set her case beside an unused auxiliary terminal, heads began to turn. "Who the hell?" someone muttered. She knelt, flipped open the latches, and revealed the contents. A compact, custom keyboard, cables coiled in perfect spirals, and a matte black device with ports that looked alien compared to standard-issue equipment. She connected it all without hesitation. "Chief," Major Kensington, the comms officer, called out, recognition dawning. "That station's offline. The network." "Not compromised," Sharma said, her voice low, steady, a calm sound in the storm. "Manipulated. There's a difference." Kensington blinked. "What?" But she was already typing. Her fingers blurred. Lines of code replaced maps and icons. What had been a battlefield interface became a stream of symbols no one else could read. She wasn't using the system. She was dissecting it. The sounds around her, shouted orders, crackling speakers, the boom of distant impacts faded to background noise. In her head, the world narrowed to rhythm, patterns, frequencies. Static wasn't random, not to her. Every burst of interference carried a fingerprint, timing, modulation, deviation. In that storm of chaos, she could feel the pulse of an intruder's hand. Whoever was jamming them wasn't just throwing noise. They were weaving it. She closed her eyes for half a heartbeat, listening. Not with ears, with memory. With training. With instinct honed from years in places no one ever admitted she'd been. "They're using polymorphic frequency hopping," she murmured. "Smart, adaptive, but noisy." "What?" Kensington asked, confused. "Every time they switch frequencies, they leave residue. Echo patterns. I can trace it." Her hands moved again, faster, surgical precision, no wasted motion. Major Kensington took a step closer, watching her. "Chief, this system is." "Quiet," she said softly. "Not rude, not loud, just final." Evans turned from the chaos and crossed the room toward her. "Chief Sharma, correct?" She nodded, eyes on the code. "You've got about 2 minutes before they walk those mortars right on top of us. Tell me you've got something." "I will," she said, "if everyone stops talking." The colonel stared, half in disbelief, half in something that might have been hope. Then slowly he stepped back. The JOCC quieted, not completely, but enough. The rhythm of typing filled the space between explosions. Sharma pulled data from the corrupted radar feed. The others had seen only noise, thousands of false targets lighting up the map like stars. But she didn't care about the targets. She cared about the timing, the micro-delays. She found what she was looking for, a pattern. Not in what the radar saw, but in how it was being blinded. Tiny fluctuations, measured in millionths of a second. Too subtle for the automated filters, not too subtle for her. She built a new algorithm from scratch, fingers dancing across the keys. No time to explain, no time to breathe. Every impact outside was a countdown. Then it appeared, a pulse. A faint, disciplined beat beneath the chaos. "Got you," she whispered. "Chief?" Evans asked. "Their spotter," she said. "He's transmitting corrections to the mortar team through the interference. That's how they're walking us in." She rerouted the data through 3 compromised relay nodes, each one feeding incomplete information. Combined, it gave her a triangulation. A set of coordinates appeared on the screen. She didn't smile, she didn't flinch. She just said, "Ridge line northeast, 2 clicks, small outcropping." Before Evans could respond, The door slammed open. Dust-covered figures burst in, the SEAL team, led by Riptide. Their faces were streaked with sweat and soot. "We're blind out there," Riptide shouted. "Mortars are chewing us up. We need intel or we're done." He saw her and froze. "What is she doing here?" he barked, pointing. "Is the IT department seriously running antivirus right now?" "Enough," Evans snapped, his voice hard. "She's working." Riptide's disbelief twisted into anger. "Working, sir, we're under fire and she's—" Sharma's voice cut through him, low but sharp. "Spotter identified, mortar position in progress." He turned, blinking. "What?" She ignored him. Her world was code again. The enemy spotter was feeding encrypted correction data to the mortar team, microbursts of signal buried in the noise. If she could isolate the transmission path. There. The line of sight. A second coordinate set bloomed beside the first. "Mortar pit located," she said. "Wadi, 1 kilometer behind the spotter, shielded from observation." Riptide laughed, the sound of a man trying to make sense of magic. "You have them. How? Every sensor on this base is fried." Sharma didn't look at him. "By listening to the noise." Evans stepped beside her, staring at the coordinates. "You're sure?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her fingers moved once more, patching the data to the only line untouched by the interference, the hardened landline connecting directly to the base's artillery battery. Her voice stayed calm. "Fire mission." The room froze. "Priority target 2 locations." She read the first coordinates. "Target 1, enemy observation post, danger close, fire for effect." There was a pause then, faint but unmistakable, the deep, rolling thunder of howitzers outside. The sound vibrated through the soles of their boots, through their chests, through their bones. On the flickering screen, a grainy camera feed stabilized just long enough to show a single white flash on the ridge line. "Target 1 serviced," she said. No triumph, just fact. She continued. "Shift to target 2, enemy mortar position, full battery, 3 volleys, fire for effect." The ground shook again, this time not from fear but from power. A steady, consuming drumbeat of thunder. The static on the comms channels faltered, then fell silent. The warbling interference faded. One by one, screens cleared, drone feeds returned, data flickered back to life. Then nothing. No more explosions, no more incoming. Only silence. A deep, disbelieving silence that filled the JOCC like oxygen returning to a suffocating room. Evans exhaled slowly. His shoulders dropped for the first time in hours. He looked at the map, blue for friendly, no red left. Riptide just stood there, motionless, staring at her. The woman he'd mocked over dinner. The one he'd dismissed as harmless. And now she was standing there in the glow of resurrected screens, calm, quiet, dust on her uniform, her fingers still poised above the keyboard. "Who the hell are you?" Evans asked softly. She paused, the only motion in the still room, and turned toward him. "My name," she said, "is Chief Warrant Officer 4 Anna Sharma." Her tone didn't change. No pride, no emotion, just truth. Then, after a breath, "Call sign Oracle." The word landed like another shell, not outside but here, in the minds of every man who'd ever heard it whispered. Oracle, the ghost in the wire, the myth behind a dozen black-budget ops, the one who could hear patterns in chaos, signals in storms, truth in noise. And now she was standing in their bunker, real, breathing human. No one spoke, no one moved. Only the hum of restored power filled the silence. She reached down, coiled her cable neatly, and locked her keyboard back into its case. Click, click. Then she turned toward Evans. "Their C2 network is down," she said. "Attack neutralized. You'll still get probes on the perimeter. Recommend QRF to confirm and collect debris." Evans stared at her like he was looking at a myth that had suddenly decided to wear a uniform. "Chief," he swallowed. "Thank you." The word sounded small. She nodded once, acknowledgement, not acceptance, and walked out. No salute, no ceremony. Just quiet footsteps fading into the cooling night. Riptide stepped aside without a word as she passed, eyes lowered, face tight with something between shame and awe. The base was safe. But for the first time he realized, not because of him. Why was the base so quiet? Morning came slow to forward operating base Viper. The first light rolled over the desert like water spilling across cracked earth, turning dust into gold. The night smoke still lingered, thin trails rising from burnt-out power conduits and shattered fuel drums. Somewhere a generator coughed back to life, its hum merging with the distant drone of helicopters ferrying out the wounded. The war hadn't stopped, it just paused to count. For most soldiers, dawn meant relief, survival counted one more day. For Anna Sharma, it meant assessment. She walked through the base while others slept or limped or prayed. The air still tasted of burnt oil. Her boots crunched softly on gravel. Every step left a perfect print, like even the dust refused to cling to her too long. No one called out. No one stopped her. Those who saw her only nodded, quick, small gestures of recognition without words. The myth had a face now, and they didn't know what to do with that. In the aftermath of chaos, power rearranges itself. The night before, Colonel Evans had given his official after-action brief. The mortars were gone. The QRF had confirmed both targets, one ridge flattened, one wadi cratered into black glass. The debris recovered looked foreign, too advanced for the local insurgents. That part was above everyone's clearance, and Evans hadn't elaborated. But one thing had spread faster than any classified report: what she had done. Oracle. The name whispered across every tent, every comms shack, every line in the Chow queue. Some said she hacked a satellite mid-attack. Others swore she hijacked enemy frequencies and made them jam themselves. The details blurred as they always did in war. But one truth stayed sharp: when the alarm screamed, she didn't. And that silence was louder than anything else. By mid-morning, Sharma was back in the operations container she'd been assigned. The inside was bare except for her gear, laptop, and a single metal chair. The glow of her monitor painted half her face in cold light. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with precise rhythm, reconfiguring network pathways, isolating compromised nodes. A soft knock came at the door. She didn't turn. Enter. The door creaked, boots scraped the floor, the sound stopped a few feet behind her. "Chief," it was Riptide. His voice carried none of the usual swagger, it sounded uncertain. "Petty officer," she replied, still typing. He paused. It was clear he hadn't planned this conversation. "We just got back from confirming the grid. You were right, dead on." "I know." Silence. He shifted his weight. "Look, about yesterday." "You embarrassed yourself," she said, tone even, not cruel. "Not me." He blinked, stung but not angry. "Yeah, guess that's true." She finally looked at him. For the first time her gaze wasn't cold. It wasn't warm either, just real. "You assumed competence only comes with noise." He opened his mouth, then closed it. She cut straight to the truth of him. "You think the loudest one in the room is in control," she said. "It's common. Soldiers mistake volume for leadership." He nodded slowly, accepting it. "I judged you too fast," he admitted quietly. "Didn't realize you were." "Don't finish that," she interrupted. "You realized exactly what you were supposed to. That rank is just a label until someone earns your attention. Last night did that." There was no pride in her voice, just observation. He exhaled. "Still, you saved us." "No," she corrected. "I did my job, the same as you. You pulled a kid out of that DFAC when the rounds hit. You think I didn't see?" Riptide blinked, surprised. "You were watching." "I'm always watching," she said simply. He half smiled then, the first trace of something human between them. Guess that's why they call you Oracle. Her eyes drifted back to the screen. Names don't matter, results do. He didn't leave immediately. For a moment he just stood there trying to find a footing between apology and respect. If you ever need our help, he said finally, you got it. My team. No questions asked. She didn't answer, but she inclined her head slightly, the smallest nod of acknowledgement. He took it for what it was worth, turned and left. When the door closed, she exhaled, the first real breath she'd taken since the night before. Her reflection in the dark part of the monitor looked older than it had yesterday. Lines under the eyes, a ghost of fatigue behind the focus. She pushed it away and kept working. Hours passed. The base shifted from survival to rebuilding. Engineers patched fiber lines. Comms techs recalibrated antennas. The smell of burnt metal was replaced by the bitter comfort of coffee and disinfectant. In the DFAC that night, the noise was gone. The laughter that once echoed through the hall had quieted to murmurs. No one sat in the middle tables where the SEALs had held court. The hierarchy had rearranged itself in silence. She entered tray in hand just as before, same meal, same corner, same stillness. But now heads turned not to mock, but to acknowledge. A corporal from the maintenance crew stood and moved aside as she passed. A drone operator paused mid-bite and gave a small nod. Even an old supply sergeant muttered something like, "Respect, ma'am," under his breath. She ignored it all, sat down, and began to eat. Methodical, quiet, alone. And yet the air around her had changed. Riptide watched from across the room. His team sat silent, the usual jokes dead on their tongues. He studied her, the way she focused on each bite like the meal itself was a mission. No wasted movement, no conversation, no performance. He stood, hesitation flashing in his eyes. His teammates looked up, waiting. He took his patch off, the SEAL insignia with the serpent and skull, its edges worn from sand and sweat. He walked to her table. The room went still. She looked up only when his shadow crossed her plate. He didn't speak right away, just met her gaze, the same one that had turned him inside out 24 hours earlier. Then without ceremony he placed the patch on the table, not slid, not tossed, placed. The gesture spoke for itself. Every soldier in the DFAC knew what that meant. SEALs didn't hand out their insignia lightly. It was a symbol traded only in moments that didn't need words, acknowledgement from one professional to another, from one warrior to someone they'd misjudged. She studied it for a long moment. Then, without emotion, she picked it up, ran her thumb over the rough embroidery, and slipped it into the sleeve pocket of her uniform. No smile, no nod, just quiet acceptance. He stepped back, gave her a slow, formal nod, not of apology but of respect, then turned and walked away. As he sat down, the other SEALs followed his lead. One by one, they turned toward her, each giving the same small nod before resuming their meal. No one clapped, no one spoke. The base didn't need a ceremony. Respect had been restored silently, cleanly. After dinner, she left the tent and stepped into the cool desert night. The stars burned sharp, unblinking, uncaring. She walked without aim for a while, past the rows of containers and vehicles, until she reached the perimeter wall. The sand beyond stretched endless, the kind of landscape that swallowed sound and memory alike. She stopped there alone, hands clasped behind her back, eyes on the horizon. The silence was almost pure. She thought of the mortars, the enemy's precision, the ghost signal hidden in the noise. It had been beautiful in its own way, elegant, efficient. A puzzle worth solving, and she had solved it, but at what cost? In war, victory rarely felt like triumph. It felt like temporary relief. Behind her, the base was alive again, distant laughter, the clink of tools, the faint sound of music from a tent radio. Life, fragile but persistent. And yet she felt apart from it, always had. The myth of Oracle wasn't built for camaraderie. It was built for results, and results came from distance. Still, as she looked at the flicker of lights from the living quarters, she felt something unexpected: warmth. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe something else. But for the first time in years, the quiet didn't feel empty. She turned back toward the camp and started walking. Each step echoed softly, like the heartbeat of a place that had nearly died and now, because of her, lived again. The gravel shifted beneath her boots, the wind tugged at her sleeve, and in that soft rhythm of motion she heard a truth she'd never said aloud. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Why couldn't she sleep anymore? The desert was supposed to be silent at night, but silence here was never complete. It carried the faint buzz of generators, the rhythmic thud of distant artillery, and the restless whisper of wind dragging sand across metal. In that soundscape, Chief Warrant Officer Anna Sharma lay awake, eyes open, mind racing. The clock on the bulkhead read 03:27. She'd been staring at the same line of code on her screen for over an hour. Not because she didn't understand it, she'd written it herself, but because something in it unsettled her. A pattern she couldn't name, a noise buried inside the clean rhythm of the system's heartbeat. It wasn't supposed to be there. Outside her container, footsteps crunched on gravel, a sentry doing his rounds. Somewhere near the airstrip, a Humvee door slammed. Normal sounds, comforting even. But beneath them, in the deep static of the base's comms net, she heard something else. A faint echo, too structured to be random, too regular to ignore. She leaned forward, fingers brushing the keyboard. The flickering monitor painted her face in pale blue as she traced the anomaly's path. It wasn't incoming interference. It was inside. Embedded, hidden. Someone had left a ghost in her network. She sat back slowly, letting out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her mind began to move in the quiet, methodical rhythm that always came before trouble. Whoever launched the attack the night before, they hadn't just jammed them. They'd listened. And now, maybe, they were still listening. The realization settled in her chest like a weight. By 05:00, she was fully dressed and on her way to the Joint Operations Center. The sun hadn't cleared the horizon yet. The sky was bruised purple and red, the light faint enough that the world felt half-dreamed. She walked past Marines sweeping debris, medics moving stretchers, engineers welding new reinforcement plates over the walls. The base had the energy of a body healing after trauma, busy, sore, but alive. The guards at the JOCC entrance straightened when they saw her. One nodded wordlessly and opened the door. Inside, the atmosphere was tense but calmer than yesterday's chaos. Screens glowed steady. Radios hummed with actual voices. The systems she'd resurrected were running clean, but even in the order, she felt the echo of that hidden rhythm. Major Kensington looked up from a workstation as she entered. "Morning, Chief. Didn't expect you back this early." "I never left," she said. He blinked. "You what?" She walked straight to the main network console and plugged in her custom device, the small matte black box from her case. Its lights came alive, pulsing softly in sync with the base's data flow. Kensington frowned. "Is there a problem?" "Yes," she said simply. "A small one that shouldn't exist." He hesitated. "You're gonna have to explain that, Chief." She didn't look up. "I've found residual signal noise embedded in our encrypted channels. It's not interference. It's a footprint. Someone touched our system from inside." Kensington's confusion shifted to concern. "Inside the firewall." She nodded. "Not from our personnel, not through the usual comms. Whoever they were, they left something behind. A backdoor maybe, or a beacon." "Jesus," he rubbed his face, "you think they can still see us?" "I think they want us to think they can." Colonel Evans arrived mid-conversation, coffee in hand, his expression hard but curious. "Chief, you're saying we're compromised again." "Not compromised," she corrected. Monitored briefly. Evans set his mug down and leaned over her shoulder, eyes narrowing at the streams of data scrolling across the screen. I don't see anything. You're not supposed to, she replied. They buried it deep, just above the hardware layer below encryption. It's elegant work. Kensington whistled softly. So, what do we do? Sharma's hands never stopped moving. We trace it quietly. Evans folded his arms. And if they're still listening, then I'll speak their language. He stared at her for a long moment, the faintest hint of admiration flickering behind the fatigue. You're a scary woman, Chief. Only when necessary. By mid-morning, she had isolated the anomaly, a packet loop designed to mirror their outgoing traffic at irregular intervals. It wasn't transmitting now, but its architecture suggested that it had before. Whoever had designed it wanted to know how they responded to attacks, not just that they did. A field test. She leaned closer to the screen, her mind piecing together intent from patterns. This wasn't the work of insurgents. This was professional, clean, patient, surgical. She'd seen this kind of digital fingerprint before, once, years ago, in a mission whose name she wasn't cleared to remember anymore. Her stomach tightened. It wasn't who they thought it was. Evans stood nearby, watching her with the kind of stillness commanders used when they didn't want to interrupt genius. Talk to me, Chief. She hesitated. If I'm right, the attack wasn't local. It was designed to test our signal resilience, not destroy us. They wanted to measure reaction time, human and digital. Kensington frowned, meaning someone used this base as a proving ground, she said softly, and we gave them exactly what they wanted. Evans' jaw tightened. You're saying this was an experiment? Yes, a demonstration. By who? She didn't answer right away. She stared at the looping data on her screen, the faint pulses almost hypnotic. Then, quietly, someone who builds ghosts like me. The room went still. Evans didn't press. He understood enough. There were layers of warfare even seasoned commanders didn't want to look too closely at, the kind fought in static and silence, in the space between transmission and thought. After several hours of analysis, she initiated a containment procedure, building a decoy signal to lead any potential watchers into a dead channel. Then she disconnected her device, wiped the terminal, and stood. It's contained, she said. Evans exhaled. Good, take some rest, Chief. You've done enough for 3 people. She gave a slight nod. Permission to walk the perimeter, sir. He studied her for a second, the tightness in her shoulders, the exhaustion she tried to hide, then nodded. Granted. The sun was high when she stepped outside. The air shimmered, waves of heat blurring the horizon. She walked the edge of the base slowly, her shadow long on the ground, her mind still replaying the data in patterns only she could see. Every war left ghosts. Some were human, some were digital, all were heavy. At the western watchtower, a Marine sniper stood guard, rifle balanced against the parapet. He was young, barely 20. He straightened when she approached. Morning, Chief, he said. She nodded. Anything moving? Not since dawn. Feels weirdly calm. It always does before it breaks again. He glanced at her, uncertain. You really find those guys last night just by listening? Her gaze stayed on the horizon. I don't listen with my ears. He frowned, confused but respectful. She didn't elaborate. After a moment she asked, What's your name, Marine? Weller, ma'am. Stay alert, Weller. The quiet's never innocent. Yes, ma'am. She left him there, still processing her words. By evening, the heat had softened and the shadows stretched long across the desert. She returned to her container, removed her boots, and sat on the floor beside her case. Her hands rested on her knees, still and quiet. In the stillness, memories began to surface, uninvited, unwelcome. A different bunker, a different base, the sound of alarms, a voice over the comms screaming for help she couldn't give. The signal she hadn't traced fast enough. The convoy that never came back. That was when the name Oracle had stopped being pride and started being penance. She closed her eyes. Sometimes, in the hum of the machines around her, she swore she could still hear their last transmission, clipped, distorted, full of static. She'd memorized every word years ago. "We're blind out here. We need intel or we're done." She'd heard it before, from a different man, a different time. And she hadn't answered fast enough. Now every base, every mission, every system she touched, all of it was part of the same quiet redemption. A knock at the door broke her reverie. "Come in," she said, voice calm though her chest ached. Riptide stepped in, wearing fatigue pants and a black t-shirt, no bravado this time. "You ever sleep, Chief?" "Sometimes," she said, "when the world does." He leaned against the doorway. "Evans says you found something today." "I found proof that we're never alone," she replied. He frowned. "That's supposed to make me feel better." "It's supposed to make you careful." He nodded slowly, understanding that she was half warning, half confession. "You know," he said after a moment, "when I first saw you, I thought you didn't belong here." "You were right," she said quietly. "I don't." He waited for her to elaborate, but she didn't. She picked up a rag and began cleaning her equipment instead, same ritual, same stillness. He watched her for a moment, then said softly, "Whatever it is that keeps you up, Chief, it wasn't your fault." Her hands paused mid-motion. When she finally spoke, her voice was almost a whisper. "That's the lie we tell ourselves so we can keep fighting." Riptide's throat tightened. He didn't know what to say to that. She looked up, met his eyes, not hard, not cold, but full of something deeper. "Go get some sleep, petty officer. You'll need it." He hesitated. For what? For whatever listens next. He left without another word. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving her in half-darkness. She sat there, motionless, the sound of the generators humming like a heartbeat in the walls. In the quiet, she whispered something to no one. Every signal leaves a trace. Outside, the desert wind picked up soft at first, then steady, carrying dust across the base in long, sighing waves. Somewhere out beyond the wire, unseen, a single light blinked once in the distance, then vanished. What if the war wasn't outside the walls, but inside the signal itself? The sun rose hard and white over the desert, burning the horizon into a haze that made everything shimmer: steel, sand, skin. The air smelled faintly of cordite and coffee, an odd mix of violence and routine. At forward operating base Viper, people had started moving again, slower, more cautious, but with purpose. The day after the attack had left behind a fragile sense of order. New sandbags lined the command bunker. Communication arrays blinked with steady green lights. Drones took off in lazy arcs over the base, their buzz constant, familiar. But underneath the hum of normalcy, something felt wrong. Anna Sharma felt it first. She stood at the edge of the comms array, her tablet balanced against her forearm, her dark hair pinned back against the morning wind. The readings didn't make sense. The network was clean, she had scrubbed it herself, but the latency was shifting. Not enough to trip alarms, just enough to whisper. The system was alive, in ways it shouldn't be. Behind her, Riptide approached, his boots crunching softly over gravel. The sun caught on the edge of his dog tags as he stopped a few paces away. "You've been standing there for 10 minutes, Chief," he said, voice calm but probing. "You see something?" "Not yet," she murmured, "but it's watching me." He frowned. "You mean someone?" She looked up at the antenna tower, its panels gleaming under the sun. "No, not someone, something." Riptide crossed his arms. "You're not making me feel any better about this base." "You weren't supposed to," she said. A small smile ghosted across her lips, gone as quickly as it came. He tilted his head. "You've got that look again, the one that says you're about to make my life complicated." She didn't deny it. When the enemy stops shooting, that's when I get worried. They stood together in silence for a moment, listening to the wind hum through the metal framework above them. Then, almost absently, she added, "You ever wonder what happens to all the data we send, all the radio chatter, drone feeds, encrypted transmissions?" Riptide shrugged. "It goes to the cloud, right? HQ, satellites, people smarter than me." She turned her gaze on him, sharp and patient. "And who watches the cloud?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The question wasn't meant for him anyway. Later that morning in the JOCC, Sharma stood before a digital map covered in small, blinking indicators. Major Kensington leaned over her shoulder, coffee in one hand, confusion in his eyes. "These are signal logs from last night," she said. "Every transmission, every ping, every relay event." He squinted. "Looks normal enough." "Normal," she repeated softly. "That's the problem." She highlighted a section, a cluster of transmissions spaced exactly 4.3 seconds apart, repeating for hours. "That's too perfect," she said. "No human system is that precise. Not ours, not theirs." Evans joined them, looking weary but alert. "Chief, what are we looking at?" "A pattern," she said. "Artificial, controlled. Someone's using our own equipment as a metronome, a heartbeat." Kensington frowned. "Heartbeat for what?" She looked up. "For a beacon." The word hung heavy in the air. Evans' tone sharpened. "You're saying there's a tracker here, on base?" "Not a tracker," she said, eyes narrowing. "A transmitter, one that's not ours." "Where?" "That's what I'm going to find out." She went to work without waiting for orders. Her device plugged into the main console, her custom interface blooming across the screen in lines of scrolling code. The JOCC dimmed around her, the hum of electronics turning almost intimate, like the room itself was holding its breath. She began to filter data in layers, peeling back each level of encryption like old skin. "This pattern was buried in the diagnostics channel," she said quietly. "That's why none of our sweeps detected it." Kensington's voice was tight. "How the hell does something like that get past Army Cyber Command?" "It doesn't," she said. "It was put there after deployment." Evans stared. "You're telling me someone here did this?" Her fingers stilled for a moment. "Not necessarily, but someone helped it find its way in." She traced the source, a subroutine masquerading as a maintenance log. It led her not to a signal tower, not to a communications hub, but to a piece of equipment most had forgotten even existed. A weather station. Riptide, who'd been leaning silently near the door, straightened. "You're kidding. That rusted pole by the north wall." "Not a pole," Sharma said. "A perfect blind spot." Within minutes, a team was assembled. Riptide, two of his men, a signals sergeant, and Sharma. They moved quickly, quietly across the compound. Dust swirled around their boots, sunlight glinting off rifles and optics. The heat pressed down like a physical thing. The weather station stood just outside the main perimeter, a thin metal mast with a sensor dome on top, connected by a thick cable half buried in sand. It looked harmless, unremarkable. "Looks dead," Riptide said. "Looks deceiving," Sharma replied. She knelt beside the base of the mast, brushing away sand until a small, square junction box came into view. She unscrewed it carefully, her movements precise and deliberate. Inside, a circuit board blinked once, faint green, before dying. "That's not standard Army issue," she said. Kensington, watching via headset from the JOCC, sounded alarmed. "Chief, can you identify it?" She held the board up to the light. "Custom build, encrypted chip, low-power burst transmitter. Whoever made this didn't want it to be found or traced." Riptide crouched beside her. "You think it's still live?" "No," she said, "but it was." "Meaning?" "Meaning we've been broadcasting our location, operations, and comms habits to whoever hit us, maybe longer than anyone realizes." Riptide swore under his breath. So we were the bait. Yes, she said softly, and the experiment worked. She placed the device into an anti-static bag, sealed it, and rose. Her face was calm, but her eyes, dark, reflective, carried something heavier. They started back toward the JOCC. Halfway there, Riptide broke the silence. You've seen this kind of thing before, haven't you? Her jaw tightened slightly. Once. Where? She didn't answer. He watched her profile, sharp, controlled, yet haunted. You don't have to. Yes, I do, she interrupted, her voice low. Because the last time I saw something like this, people died. The words landed with quiet weight. Back inside the JOCC, Colonel Evans examined the device under a magnifier. You're telling me this came from inside our own supply chain? I'm telling you it shouldn't exist, Sharma replied. But it does, and whoever planted it is still listening somewhere. Evans exhaled, pinching the bridge of his nose. All right, what's our play? Sharma's expression didn't change. We feed them. Kensington blinked. Feed them. We'll rebuild the beacon, keep its pulse alive. But this time, it transmits what I want them to see. Evans stared. You can do that. I can make noise, she said simply, and if they're out there, they'll answer it. Dangerous game, Riptide muttered. Only if you lose. Evans gave a slow nod. Do it. For the next 12 hours, Sharma worked in near silence, surrounded by the soft hum of machines and the low murmur of soldiers who knew better than to disturb her. She rebuilt the transmitter virtually, crafting a false signal, a heartbeat identical to the original but inverted, designed to draw out anyone still listening. By nightfall, she activated it. The room went still. For a few moments, nothing happened, just the steady rhythm of the bass, wind, metal, breath. Then faintly, over one of the auxiliary channels came a whisper of static, a single pulse. Then another. Perfectly timed. They were listening. Sharma leaned closer to the console, voice barely above a whisper. There you are. Riptide, standing beside her, stared at the monitor. That's them. Yes, she said, and now they think we're talking back. Evans looked uneasy. Chief, what happens when they realize it's bait? They won't, she said, eyes never leaving the screen, because whoever's on the other end knows exactly what I do. The colonel frowned, meaning. Her voice was quiet, meaning they trained with me. The room fell into stunned silence. Outside, beyond the walls of the base, somewhere in the darkness of the desert, an unseen transmitter blinked once, faint, deliberate. It was an answer. Why did the signal feel familiar? Night wrapped around forward operating base Viper like a shroud. The wind had picked up, sweeping sand across the floodlights until every beam turned hazy, muted. The hum of the generators was steady, but something beneath it pulsed, faint, deliberate, inhuman. Inside the JOCC, the lights were dimmed to protect night vision. Only the glow of the screens lit the faces of those awake, Colonel Evans, Major Kensington, Riptide, and Anna Sharma, who stood motionless before the main console. Her eyes never left the data stream flowing across the screen, lines of code flickering like heartbeat spikes on a monitor. The signal she had baited was responding. It's mirroring us, Kensington murmured, voice low, reverent. Every packet we send, it sends one back like an echo. It's not an echo, Sharma said quietly. It's a handshake. Evans leaned forward, meaning. Meaning someone out there just said hello. Riptide shifted, unease settling in his posture. Can we trace it? Sharma's fingers were already moving, isolating the incoming pulses, filtering the noise. They're smart, she said, hiding behind civilian comms bands, but I know that rhythm. She zoomed in on a repeating sequence. 3 pulses, pause, 2 pulses, pause, 1. Evans frowned. That's supposed to mean something. Her throat tightened. It's a signature. Kensington looked confused. A signature. She didn't answer right away. The pattern kept playing, steady, taunting. It wasn't random, it wasn't hostile, it was personal. Riptide watched her closely. "Chief." Her hands stilled on the keyboard. For a long moment she didn't speak. Then, in a voice softer than before, she said, "I used to send that pattern, years ago." The room went still. Evan's tone softened, careful. "To who?" She exhaled, slow and deliberate. "To my partner." Kensington blinked. "You mean?" "Another signals officer," she said, cutting him off. "Different theater, different war. We worked in tandem, paired operators. We built networks, hunted jammers, ghosted satellites. Our call signs were Oracle and Muse." "Muse," Riptide repeated. She nodded once. "He was better than me, faster. He could read static like sheet music." Kensington frowned. "So you think Muse is out there, working with whoever's jamming us?" Sharma stared at the screen, the blue light catching the edges of her face, making her look carved from frost. "He's not working with them," she said quietly. "He is them." Riptide's jaw tightened. "You're sure?" "I buried his code 2 years ago," she said. "But ghosts don't stay buried." The colonel stepped closer. "Chief, I need clarity. Is this a rogue operator situation?" "Yes." "Affiliated?" "No, freelance, off the books." Evans cursed under his breath. "So a friendly turned enemy with the same training you have." "Same tools," she said, "different purpose." "Then he's good." She nodded. "He taught me half of what I know." A long pause settled over the room. The monitors glowed in silence, the data stream continuing its rhythmic pulse. 3, 2, 1. Finally, Riptide spoke. "So what does he want?" She tilted her head slightly, as if listening to something only she could hear. "To see if I'd answer." Evan straightened. "You're not planning to." Her voice was calm, but something in it trembled. "I already did." Kensington's eyes went wide. "Chief." "It's the only way to draw him out," she said. "He won't attack while he's talking." Evans stepped forward. "You're compromising our network again." "No," she said, "just myself." Her fingers began to type, constructing a narrow, encrypted reply, a phrase so simple it barely qualified as communication. "Muse confirmed, Oracle online." She hit send. The reply came in less than 3 seconds. "I wondered when you'd find me." Riptide muttered, "Christ." Kensington leaned closer. That's him." She didn't answer. She typed again. "Why here?" The response scrolled across the screen, one line at a time. "Because they trust you." Evans' jaw set. "He's taunting you." "No," Sharma whispered. "He's warning me." Another line appeared. "They're not who you think." The room fell silent again. The colonel exchanged a look with Riptide, who raised an eyebrow, a silent question neither wanted to ask aloud. Kensington broke the quiet. "Chief, could be misdirection, psychological warfare." Sharma's eyes flicked toward him, cold, precise. "Everything is psychological warfare." She typed again. "Explain." The screen blinked. The next message took longer to arrive, as if the sender were thinking. "You're fixing the wrong network. The infection isn't in your machines." Evans stepped closer. "What the hell does that mean?" Before Sharma could reply, the lights flickered. The hum of electronics wavered once, twice, then stabilized. Kensington checked his console. "No power loss, that wasn't us." Riptide's hand went to the rifle slung over his shoulder. "Feels like someone just knocked." Sharma typed again, fingers steady. "Location." The response came instantly. "You already know." Her eyes narrowed. "He's inside our comms net, routing through our own encryption layers. He's bouncing the signal off our satellite uplink, using our secure network as camouflage." Evan's voice hardened. "Can you cut him off?" She shook her head. "If I cut him off, I lose him." "So what do we do?" We listen, she said softly, until he stops talking. The next message appeared. You shouldn't have stayed, Anna. The use of her first name hit like a slap. No one in the room had ever heard it spoken aloud. Evans looked at her. He knows you personally. She didn't look up. Better than anyone. Another message blinked in. They used you to clean their mess, same as before. She frowned. Before, Evans asked. Riptide watched her carefully. What's he talking about, Chief? Her silence said enough. Muse sent another line. Check the logs, 200 Zulu, you'll see it. Evans nodded to Kensington. Do it. The Major pulled up the logs, encrypted transmissions, radio checks, routine. But one stood out. A secure outgoing burst, time-stamped exactly as Muse said. It wasn't hers. It wasn't anyone. Who sent this? Evans demanded. Kensington's fingers flew. Can't trace it. It originated inside the base. System lists a blank operator ID. Riptide muttered a curse. So we've got someone here still playing his game. Evans turned to Sharma. Your call, Chief. What's our move? She stared at the message on the screen. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the glass, eyes hollow, expression unreadable. We answer him, she said finally, but not through the system. What do you mean? She unplugged her custom keyboard, coiled the cable, and pulled a small handheld transceiver from her pack, a relic of another era, analog, untouchable by digital interference. She tuned it manually, her movements calm and deliberate. What frequency are you dialing into? Riptide asked. The one we used when everything else went dark, she said. Static filled the air, then faintly a whisper. Oracle. The voice was male, smooth, steady, almost kind. Muse, she said quietly. You shouldn't be there. You made sure I would be. You think they told you the truth about that night? Her hand tightened on the transmitter. Don't. You never asked why the convoy didn't answer your call. Evans motioned for Kensington to record the frequency. Riptide stayed still, sensing that any sudden motion might break whatever fragile thread connected them. Muse's voice continued, soft as breath. It wasn't the enemy who jammed you, Anna. It was us. She froze. Evans frowned. What's he talking about? Muse spoke again. They needed the op to fail, and you, the perfect scapegoat, the oracle who saw too late. Her pulse pounded in her ears. You're lying. Am I? You're standing in another test site, Chief. Another ghost experiment. You fixed their system so they can build better ones. You're still doing their work. She wanted to deny it, but the words struck deep, because part of her already feared they were true. I saw the dead, Muse, she said softly. I saw what we left behind. And you're seeing it again. The static flared. The line went dead. Silence swallowed the room. Riptide broke it first. Chief, you okay? She set the transceiver down gently, her face unreadable. Get a team to the satellite relay. Now. Evans nodded to Riptide, who motioned to his men and bolted. Kensington looked shaken. You think he's right, that's someone inside. I think the truth doesn't care what we believe, she said, but we'll find it. Evans' eyes searched hers. Chief, if what he said is true, then I've been fighting for the wrong side twice. Outside, the desert wind moaned against the walls like a low, endless breath. In the corner of the JOCC, one small indicator light blinked green, steady as a heartbeat. But no one had activated it. Who do you trust when even the static lies? The base was still, eerily so. Every sound felt amplified, the faint clink of boots on metal grating, the soft hum of lights overhead, the dry wind crawling through the cracks in the walls. The soldiers of Fob Viper were awake, but they moved differently now. Slower, eyes sharper, voices quieter. Because word had spread. Someone inside was feeding the enemy. And Chief Warrant Officer Anna Sharma, the quiet, composed oracle, was the one hunting them. The day after her conversation with Muse began like any other, but beneath the surface everything was fraying. Trust was currency now, and everyone was broke. Riptide found her standing near the operations board, staring at the sea of call signs and movement logs. Her face was unreadable, but her hands were still, too still. "Colonel wants an update," he said. She didn't turn. "He'll have one when I do." He studied her profile, the same calm that unnerved people because it looked like control but felt like detachment. "You didn't sleep again." "Neither did you." He almost smiled. "Touché." She finally looked at him. "The transmission from 200, did you find anything?" "Relay logs show a manual activation from inside the perimeter," he said. "No external signal. Whoever did it had clearance." "Access point." "Southwest Comm Station. Only 3 people had the code." Her gaze hardened. "Names." Riptide handed her a tablet. She read the list: Sergeant Imani Clark, Corporal Ruiz, and Major Kensington. Her eyes lingered on the last name. Riptide noticed. "You think it's him?" "I think I don't think," she said. "Not until I see it." She walked toward the exit, the door slamming softly behind her. The sun was brutal outside, bleaching the world into shades of white and tan. She moved through the camp with purpose, every step measured. The soldiers she passed didn't meet her eyes. They didn't know what she was looking for, but they all felt like suspects. She found Kensington in the briefing room, hunched over a monitor, a half-empty mug beside him. "Chief," he said, looking up, "you look like you haven't blinked in a day." "I haven't had time," she said. "We need to talk." He gestured for her to sit. "What about?" "The 200 transmission." His brow furrowed. "Yeah, I saw the report. Weird stuff." "Your access code was used." He blinked. "My what?" "Your clearance," she repeated. "Someone used your code to send a signal through the Southwest relay." His confusion was convincing, too convincing. "Chief, I was in the JOCC all night," he said quickly. "Evans can vouch for that." "He can vouch for your body," she said quietly, "not your login." He frowned, defensive now. "You think I did this?" "I think you need to tell me who else had access to your console." He rubbed his face, thinking. "Corporal Ruiz checked the system logs for me before midnight. Clark ran diagnostics, that's it." "Ruiz," she repeated. "Where is he now?" "North Perimeter, guard shift." She stood. "Thanks." He called after her, "Chief, you really think this came from one of us?" She stopped in the doorway. "I think ghosts need hosts." The wind howled as she stepped outside. At the North Perimeter the sun was lowering, turning the world gold and violent. Ruiz stood by the tower, rifle slung, staring toward the dunes. He turned when he heard her approach, surprised. "Chief Sharma," he said, "didn't expect." "Where were you at 200?" she interrupted. He blinked. "In my rack, ma'am." "Logs say your code accessed the relay." His confusion shifted to fear. "That's impossible." Her eyes stayed on him, steady, unreadable. "Show me your comms device." He hesitated. "That wasn't a request." He handed it over. She scrolled through the logs, nothing unusual, until she hit one file buried under metadata. It was locked behind encryption she didn't recognize. "Where did you get this firmware?" she asked. "It came with the update last month, ma'am, from Central Command." She frowned. "No, it didn't." "Ma'am, this isn't Army code." Her fingers moved fast. The encryption pattern wasn't foreign, it was familiar. Too familiar. The same structure as the beacon chip she'd found in the weather station. Her stomach sank. Muse's words echoed in her mind. "You're fixing the wrong network." She turned sharply. "Who installed the update?" I don't know," Ruiz stammered. "I just followed protocol." She glanced back toward the main compound, dread solidifying in her chest. "Protocol," she repeated. That's what they used. Riptide's voice came through her earpiece. Chief, we've got movement on the secondary uplink. Looks like someone's trying to access the SAT channel. She was already moving. Lock it down now. On it. She sprinted across the compound, boots pounding the dirt. Her shadow stretched long across the sand as the sun dipped lower. Soldiers turned to look but didn't interfere. The air tasted of dust and adrenaline. Inside the JOCC, alarms were flashing red when she burst in. Evans looked up sharply. Chief. Where Kensington? She demanded. Still in the briefing room. She froze. No, he's not. The colonel frowned. What? Riptide entered moments later, breathless. Sir, the major's console is gone. Someone wiped it. Evans slammed his fist on the table. He's our leak. Sharma didn't move. Her expression didn't shift. But something inside her, something she kept buried, cracked just enough to let the truth through. No, she said quietly. He's not the leak, he's the target. Evans turned to her, confused. Explain. They didn't compromise him, she said. They cloned him. Riptide frowned. Cloned. Digital clone, she said. They copied his credentials, his biometrics, his access patterns. They used him as cover. Evans looked grim. So we're still blind. Not blind, she said. Just not looking in the right place. She turned back to the main screen, pulling up a fresh data feed from the satellite uplink. A single encrypted thread pulsed faintly, running parallel to their comms traffic, almost invisible. Found you, she whispered. What is it? Evans asked. A dead man's signature, she said. The feed traced back to a terminal registered to the logistics network. Not the JOCC, not signals, supply. Riptide's expression darkened. Supply, that's Clark's department. Exactly. Within minutes they were moving, Evans coordinating security, Riptide armed and ready, and Sharma at the front, her pace fast and silent. The supply hangar loomed ahead, its lights flickering faintly through the dust. The door was slightly ajar. Riptide signaled his men to flank. Sharma entered first, sidearm drawn, the beam of her flashlight cutting through the dim. The room was still, crates stacked high, metal glinting, the smell of oil and something sharper, ozone. Then she saw it. A small transmitter rigged to a power source, cables snaking into a wall terminal. The device blinked once, faint green, then red. Tripwire, she whispered. Too late. The power cut out, plunging the hangar into darkness. Then over her earpiece, a familiar voice, calm, smooth, echoing in the static. Muse to Oracle, you were close. Her grip tightened on the gun. Where are you? In the signal where I belong, he said. But you're running out of time, Anna. The ones you're protecting aren't who you think. Stop hiding behind riddles. Stop pretending you're innocent. She exhaled slowly. What do you want? I want you to see what you fixed. A faint glow filled the far corner, a monitor booting back up on its own. It displayed the base's security feed, looping rapidly. But the timestamps weren't from today. They were from weeks ago. Footage of the weather beacon being installed, not by insurgents, not by Muse. By U.S. technicians. Sharma froze. No. Muse's voice softened. It was never sabotage, Oracle. It was testing. They needed a controlled breach to justify a new security contract. You just help them prove it works. Evans' voice cut in, urgent. Chief, we've got unauthorized uplink. Someone's transmitting from your location. Sharma's voice stayed calm. Cut it. We can't. It's piggybacking your transceiver. She looked down. Her handheld, the same one she'd used to talk to Muse, was glowing faint blue. Damn it. She threw it to the ground and crushed it under her boot. Sparks hissed. The screens went dark. Silence. Riptide stepped closer. Chief, what the hell is happening? She stared at the dead monitor. We're not the experiment, we're the evidence. Evan's voice came again through comms. Say again. They needed data, attack patterns, reaction times, lives lost, proof that their new defense AI works, and we just gave them everything. The weight of it hit like gravity. Riptide's face hardened. You think Command knew? I think Command designed it. For a long, breathless moment, no one moved. Then Sharma holstered her weapon. Her eyes looked empty, not from fear, from knowing too much. Pack up the rig, she said quietly. We're not staying. Where are we going? Riptide asked. Off the grid. He hesitated. That's Desert Chief nowhere. She looked toward the horizon, where night was swallowing the last of the light. Exactly. How do you fight an enemy when the enemy wears your own flag? The desert at night was a different world, a place of ghosts and whispers. The sand no longer burned but breathed, the stars sharp and unblinking above the horizon. The convoy lights of forward operating base Viper glimmered in the distance, shrinking to faint dots as Anna Sharma walked away from it all. Riptide followed silently a few meters behind, his rifle slung low, his steps deliberate. The others had stayed behind to hold the base while the system purged. Evans had argued, shouted, ordered her not to go. But Anna had already made her choice. She had to finish this, not as Chief Sharma, not as Oracle, but as the woman who'd carried too many ghosts. Chief, Riptide called softly through the wind, you sure about this? Her eyes stayed on the horizon. No, but that's never stopped me before. He gave a small, grim smile. You really think he'll show? He's been here the whole time, she said, listening, waiting for me to step outside the wire. Why? Because I'm the only one who can end the conversation. They reached the old relay ridge, a cluster of rocks and twisted metal left from an abandoned outpost. The air smelled faintly of ozone, the way it does after something burns. She stopped, knelt, and opened her pack. Inside was the decoy transmitter, the same one she'd rebuilt days ago to trap Muse. She set it on the ground, switched it on, and the small light blinked once, steady, alive. Riptide looked uneasy. So we're calling him again. No, she said softly, we're inviting him home. For several long seconds there was only wind and static. Then a voice, faint at first, rising through the noise. Oracle. Her throat tightened. Muse. You found the feed, he said. You saw the truth. I saw enough. And what will you do with it? She looked out across the sand, toward the unseen city of lights beyond the horizon. I haven't decided yet. He chuckled softly, a sound that still carried warmth, even after all the damage. Always the thinker. I stopped thinking a long time ago, she said. No, he said gently. You just started feeling. That's worse. Riptide stepped forward, his jaw tense. If you're recording this, we'll trace your... Easy sailor, Muse interrupted. You can't trace an echo. Anna raised a hand, silencing Riptide. Her tone shifted, calm, deliberate, like she was back in a briefing room made of static and ghosts. They're using soldiers as test data, she said. Every loss, every shot fired, recorded, fed into an AI defense algorithm. You helped design it. I did, Muse said simply, and you tested it. Her heart felt heavier with every word. How long have you known? Long enough to see what they were building, a war that fights itself. No politics, no headlines, just numbers. She closed her eyes briefly. And you decided to burn it all down. No, he said softly. I decided to wake you up. The wind howled between them, a long, mournful breath across the ridge. You could have just told me, she said. I tried, Muse replied, but you were too loyal. His voice softened again. They called you Oracle because you could see the unseen, but you forgot that truth isn't just data, Anna, it's blood. She said nothing. Riptide shifted, his grip tightening on his rifle. Chief, we've got heat signatures West Ridge, maybe 300 meters. Drones, she asked. He checked the scope. No, people, 3 of them. Muse's voice came again. You're not alone, Oracle. They sent cleanup. Riptide swore, command. Or whoever they are now, Muse said. Same difference. Anna's mind moved fast, calm in the storm. You led them here. I gave them a choice, Muse said. They took the wrong one. She exhaled slowly. Then it ends tonight. The first shot cracked through the air, sharp, distant. Sand exploded near their feet. Riptide dove behind a rock, firing a quick burst into the darkness. 2 o'clock, 200 out, he shouted. Anna didn't move. She stayed low, adjusting the transmitter's frequency. Chief, Riptide barked, we're getting pinned. Keep them busy, she said. I need 10 seconds. Bullets hissed through the dark. Sparks danced against stone. Riptide grunted as one skimmed his vest, the impact knocking him sideways. He cursed under his breath. You better be doing something worth dying for. I'm turning off the lights, she murmured. The transmitter clicked once, then the world went silent. Every device in a 5-mile radius, comms, drones, targeting systems, went dead. Even the night vision goggles on the approaching team flickered out, leaving them blind in the dark. Riptide blinked. What the hell did you do? She stood slowly, her face illuminated only by the faint glow of the dying transmitter. I pulled the plug on their god. The ridge was quiet again, too quiet. The attackers, disoriented, began firing sporadically into the dark, revealing their positions. Riptide picked them off one by one, precise, controlled, silent. Years of training reduced to instinct. When the last echo of gunfire faded, Anna stood motionless, her eyes on the transmitter. Its light was fading, each blink slower than the last. Muse, she said softly, it's done. His voice came faintly through the static. You always finish what you start. Where are you? She asked. Silence, then after a pause, closer than you think. Riptide turned, scanning. Chief. A shape emerged from the shadows, a man, hands raised, unarmed. His face was worn, eyes hollow but alive. Muse, Anna whispered. He looked older, thinner, haunted. But the eyes were the same, sharp, brilliant, impossible to read. He stopped a few meters away. I thought you'd kill me on sight. I haven't decided yet. He smiled faintly. That's the Anna I remember. Riptide's rifle stayed trained on him. One wrong move. Muse raised a hand gently. I'm not your enemy, sailor. You sure fooled me. Anna stepped between them. Why the games, Muse? Why all of this? He studied her face for a moment, then said quietly, because truth spoken by a ghost carries more weight than one spoken by a soldier. You think this redeems you? She asked. No, he said, but it might redeem you. He reached into his vest slowly and pulled out a small drive, tossing it gently onto the sand between them. Everything, he said. Files, logs, directives, proof, it's all there. The program's called Sentinel. They're already expanding it to civilian monitoring. You stop this or it consumes everything. She stared at the drive. The weight of what it represented settled like stone in her chest. What about you? She asked. He smiled sadly. I don't exist anymore. Before she could answer, a spotlight cut through the night, a drone descending fast. Riptide swore. They found us. Muse looked at her one last time. Run. Come with us. He shook his head. I'm the variable they can't predict. As long as I stay, you still have time. He turned and walked toward the edge of the ridge. The drone light tracked him, locking on. Muse, she shouted. He looked back, the faintest smile ghosting across his face. You always were the better one, Oracle. The explosion came without sound at first, just light. The shockwave followed, hot and fast, throwing sand and dust into the air. Riptide covered her, shielding them from debris. When the air cleared, there was nothing left of the ridge but smoking metal and glass. Silence returned. Riptide lowered his arm slowly. He's gone. Anna didn't answer. Her gaze stayed fixed on the drive half buried in the sand. She reached down, picked it up, and closed her fist around it. They walked back in silence. By dawn, they reached the outskirts of the base. The morning sun painted the desert gold again, cruelly normal, as if the night hadn't happened. Evans met them at the gate, his expression unreadable. "You did it," he said quietly. "Signal's clean. Whatever was inside, it's gone." She handed him the drive. "Not gone," she said, "just buried deeper." He looked at her, confusion flickering behind fatigue. "What's on it?" "The truth," she said, "or what's left of it." He started to speak, but she was already walking away. Later that day, she sat alone in the cafeteria, the same place where the seal had once joked about her rank, the same room that had fallen silent when she'd told them the truth. Now it was silent again, not from fear but from understanding. Riptide sat across from her. "Command wants a debrief." "Let them wait. They won't like that. They never do." He studied her for a moment. "You think they'll bury this?" "They always bury what they can't control," she said. "Then why not destroy it?" "Because someone has to remember." He nodded slowly. "You're staying quiet again." She gave a faint smile. "It's what I do best." He leaned back, watching her for a long moment. "You ever regret it, Chief? All the silence?" She looked at her hands, the same hands that had fixed systems, traced ghosts, and pulled the plug on gods. "Silence isn't regret," she said softly. "It's restraint." He didn't fully understand, but he nodded anyway. Outside, the sound of helicopters filled the air, evac rotations, supply drops, maybe replacements. Life continuing. She stood, gathered her things, and paused before leaving. "Riptide," she said. "Yeah. If anyone asks what happened here, I'll tell them we followed orders." She smiled faintly. "Good man." He watched her go, the quiet figure walking toward the light, toward another horizon, another war that didn't yet know her name. She didn't look back. As she passed the base gate, the desert wind carried her final words like a prayer. "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak," she whispered. "It simply acts." The wind swallowed the sound. And somewhere in a server room half a world away, a red light blinked, slow, steady, patient, like a heartbeat waiting to begin again.